This game does not respect my time. Greetings. We will be discussing this specific phrase in the video. Games that do not respect your time. What type of game usually gets hit with that label? Is it only live service games that fall into this trap? Is the phrase overused? And is it just a buzzword? Do people even mean what they say when they express this notion about a game? And do some other people, usually defenders of the hacking innocent dev studios, maybe misunderstand what that phrase even means? And how often do we even come across this phrase unironically online in reviews? And do you even regularly use it yourself to describe a game? Is it a phrase that is actively used to describe games on a regular basis? Is this phrase just a term to voice maybe general discontent with a game, a lack of quality, or is there a more personal note behind it, an actual attack on the developers behind the game? Or are certain people just over-analyzing a simple phrase again? Do you or should you even care about the developer's vision for their game as a customer, a consumer? Is this something that came about due to all of our brains being rotted away by short-term brain rot content satisfaction? Well, I can tell you one thing immediately, it is not that complicated. First, this sentence is just a statement. This product does not respect my time is not a moral admonishment of the developers or an expression of hate. Quite the contrary, it's just a simple opinion on the game's mechanics. It's vision delivery method, so to say. In short, the gameplay. To me, wasting my time or anything of the sorts seldomly has anything to do with quote-unquote respect. Maybe the term doesn't even really fit, so to say. Don't waste my time would be a more fitting and realistic simplification of the sentence, I guess, because respect never comes up when I think about playing a video game. But that's just a semantics argument because the original phrase is just kind of a matter of speech. There is probably no deeper meaning behind it, or some sort of hidden message that somehow conveys animosity of the gamer towards the poor developer who poured his heart and soul into a project. I assume 90% of players who actually even use this sentence just have it as a generic expression. When they ask for their time being respected, it just means they want their money's worth out of a game, which is a product that they paid for. Ideally, they don't want their time wasted. It's as simple as that. I never interpret it as a finger-wagging, moral judging of the developers themselves, but some people seem to do. The intended vision of a game, or the developer's intended vision, doesn't really even matter if the medium through which it is delivered does not resonate with the players. The medium through which a game delivers a vision should always be primarily gameplay. Your game could be really good, but if its core gameplay does not deliver your vision, you as a developer are just kind of shit out of luck. If the base fundamental aspect of a video game is non-engaging, it is not interesting or polished, then it doesn't matter what the original developer intended vision for the game was. The player won't like interacting with the game. They won't have their time and money respected. The vehicle for delivering a developer's vision needs to be adequately engaging in order to get the quote-unquote message to the player. It's really got nothing to do with respect. That is why I always harp on about gameplay first so much. It is so fundamental, it is kind of the most important aspect of a video game. That is why game is in the word. The intended vision of a game needs to be delivered through the medium of gameplay first. Story, dialogue, music, lore, world building, art style, all of these aspects help to support the aspect of gameplay, but without proper gameplay, it is not a video game. And the message or the vision of the game won't resonate with the players. Without an engaging gameplay loop that quote-unquote respects my time and doesn't frustrate me, I don't really give two shits about what the vision of the developer might have been intended to be for this game. I want interactive media. I don't care about movies or meaningless busy work or walking sections or narrated text on loading screens. These are all aspects that can enhance the experience if they are done in certain tasteful quantities. But the primary gameplay needs to be good as well. All of this, by the way, does not equate to an accusation of the developers. I don't think, most of the time, developers are actively malicious in the implementation of time-wasting aspects of a video game. Unless we are talking about the worst aspects of live service games, of course. And even then, it could mostly boil down to pressure from investors and publishers to monetize the product. Not always though. Sometimes you have shitty devs. Shitty devs do exist. But that term, that phrase, usually never equates to someone accusing the developers of actively and maliciously wasting time of the player. At least I never meant it that way. And if I were to use the phrase, I would never mean it that way. I personally am not even aware that I've ever actively and honestly even used that phrase to describe a game's gameplay aspects. And I assume a lot of other people either haven't used that phrase or they don't mean it in a derogatory and malicious way. Time wasting usually arises due to design flaws, lack of time or incorrect assumptions of the player base, or bugs or other progression stoppers come to mind. Sometimes it's done for the sake of immersion and to add friction to a game. And at that point, it comes down to personal preference of each player. And it doesn't mean that certain tedious or quote-unquote grindy aspects of a game cannot work and fit into the overall gameplay feel. In fact, if done correctly, it can enhance the experience, but it comes down to personal preference. Even if it's done well, it still stands to argue that certain players won't vibe with the aspect of the game. No matter how good the game is, no matter how well implemented the quote-unquote tedious aspect is. For example, Valheim's mining and ore transportation comes to mind. I have seen many videos on Valheim where how you have to transport and mine certain type of ore, and the limitations of that transportation is a gripe for certain people. And for certain people it is a deal breaker because they do not like the aspect of the game. That is an example of immersive and an intended mechanic not resonating well with certain players. Some other players love the aspect of Valheim. It's all in the eye of the beholder. And in most cases, for the most part, it's a matter of personal preference, as many reviews are just that. They are opinion pieces. Some players like grinding for prime warframes. Other people would rather play the market and buy the prime parts. Other people have the funds to just outright buy the prime access. To each their own. And in Warframe at least, there are in-game ways to lessen a specific grind, usually through the player market or by pity systems or by just amassing the premium currency in general, or maybe just having a lot of real-life funds available. Is that usually a good aspect of a game? Well, free-to-play aspects and how that's affecting a specific game, that is probably a topic for another video. I'm just using the Warframe aspect here to highlight that good games can have aspects of time wasting and friction. When a player voices the sentence of frustration, you're wasting my time, it is usually always simply directed at the game itself, not towards the developer. And usually it's uttered as a generic statement, not out of malice or hatred. I for one do not enjoy any survival games due to the inherent game design and mechanics that I experience as tedious, annoying and time wasting. I don't like the inherent gameplay aspect of survival games. I've tried playing many and I've never enjoyed it. That doesn't mean when I say, or when I would say, this game doesn't respect my time about any survival game, that I hate the developers behind it. I just personally don't like the game and I won't participate. Therefore, the game's vision is theoretically lost on me. It's one of the most normal things to happen in gaming. I also don't think that it's a bad thing that a term like this can become, I guess, somewhat of a token statement. Although the people claiming that it's overused, I don't know. I don't see this everywhere. I feel like people who complain about this term are exaggerating how prevalent it is really. I don't personally see the phrase being used aggressively or in every review. And again, I'm pretty sure I never used it myself to describe my dislike of a game's mechanics. There's nothing wrong with the sentence or statement or with that mindset either. We have only so much money and time to spare within a day. If a game cannot keep me entertained, too bad for the game, and I guess too bad for the developer because they won't make money off of me, I guess. But sadly, I'm not going to twist myself into a pretzel and force myself to play and engage with a product that I don't enjoy just to eventually understand the developer's intended vision. That's not how reality works. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you as a developer failed to capture my attention and that I won't be the target audience and I won't be a future consumer of whatever game you might be selling. That is just how things are sometimes. That intended vision was tied to an exhausting, time-wasting experience that I didn't enjoy, and thus it never came through to me before I uninstalled the game and refunded it. That doesn't mean I hate the developer or that other players won't enjoy the game. It just means I didn't enjoy. And I just happened to voice my personal opinion on the game somewhere, as many others did so too, in reviews or comments, whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. It also doesn't mean I wanted developers to make their games shorter or easier to get into, or that I want less friction in games. Quite the opposite. I like games that have friction. I like games that are not easy to get into. But that also means that I or you will hit personal walls where their unenjoyment hits kind of critical levels, and you find out what your own limits are of sticking with a game, what genres you like and what genres you categorically don't like. I had that happen multiple times where I put a game down after a few hours because it just didn't resonate with me. On the other hand, I love friction in older FromSoft games, the way you had to traverse the world on foot in Dark Souls 1 and you had to earn the right of bonfire warping. But this very mechanic might also be the reason other players might not have enjoyed Dark Souls 1, as they see this aspect of forced exploration as tedious, a time-wasting endeavor. That just means the game is likely not for them. It's not a moral admonishment of From Software for making Dark Souls not enjoyable to every single player in existence. It's just that one specific aspect of game design in Dark Souls 1 might just not be enjoyable by a certain type of player, thus they put the game down. They probably don't hate FromSoft. Why would them voicing this issue with the game be a problem? Everyone is allowed to criticize Dark Souls 1 for a specific aspect, just as everyone else is allowed to counter the argument and even make fun of the critique. Different people, different preferences. And I'm also not completely against the idea of ridiculing certain people for having stupid opinions. Everyone is free to speak. The vision of Dark Souls 1 just kind of incorporates this grueling, dark and difficult journey of setbacks and literal pitfalls until you earn the right of warping. That is the developer intended vision, and that won't resonate with everyone. So what if a player thinks this is wasting their time? That is a personal opinion coming from a personal experience with a game, and just argumenting with these people that they should just sit down and force themselves to enjoy Dark Souls 1 and stick with it, that's not gonna work with everyone. Sometimes people can stick quote unquote with the game and it starts to resonate, but sometimes it just won't work out. You can't just force everyone to like a game, a movie, a book or a music genre just because you think that sticking it out for long enough, they'll eventually see the light. Some people think Lord of the Rings is too long and boring of a movie, and we are just talking about the movies. I'm reading the Silmarillion unironically every few years or so. I would argue that Lord of the Rings the movie is still too short, but some people think it's too much yapping. Too much nothing going on. The first movie is boring, not enough things. The Frodo and Sam sections are boring. And you can't change their minds on that, no matter how much you might want to tell them that they're idiots. You can't change their minds on that. Sure, you can see them as a lost cause, you can make fun of them, and again, I'm never opposed to make fun of idiots or to dunk on an opinion you don't like. But let's be honest, that probably won't get them to enjoy Lord of the Rings. If anything, that's probably going to put them off even more. Some of them just want their entertainment to be light, easy, and uncomplicated. They just want to consume product. We don't have to like these people, and I've pointed at these people many times for the reason that some of the games and some of the aspects of the industry have gone to shit, but it's not gonna change the fact that these people will still be around. And on the other hand, the players that are highly critical of games are also going to be around. Both of these crowds can come to the same conclusion, that a game does not respect their time. The brainless consumers can come to the same conclusion, and they can have different arguments towards a game, while the critical or the vigilant gamer crowd can also come to the same conclusion, expressing the same basic idea of a game, while having other means to make that conclusion. Both sides, the consumer side, the zoomy consumers, and the black-pilled gamers, about the same game, they can both argue that the game is wasting their time. While the consumer might express that the game isn't as easy enough to get into, or they have to grind too much to do things, while the seasoned veteran black-pilled gamer thinks that the gameplay aspects aren't well implemented enough, or the game isn't difficult enough, or the tasks that you're doing for the time you're investing aren't rewarding enough. both of these crowds can come to the same conclusion that a game is not respecting their time. And probably none of these groups of people actively hate the developer behind the game. I want to reiterate that time-wasting argument does not just originate from brain-dead players. That's very important. The people who want every game to just be baby mode and everything handed to them, that is not the group of people or the group of players that espouse this opinion. In many cases, it's many different people making that argument about a game, and it's completely personally justified. It's a justifiable expression of frustration. A game can make something that would be considered tedious fun and engaging, while a lesser product, a lesser game, makes the same type of content completely unenjoyable. It kind of all comes down to implementation of the mechanics. This is also why some games are very divisive. Death Stranding, for example. Many players just don't vibe with the basic gameplay mechanics of both Death Stranding games. For some, Death Stranding would probably be more fun if it was any other genre, maybe like a generic third-person action shooter, without the delivery service aspect. But that was not the vision of the game's developers. And unfortunately, that vision and the commitment to the vision means that certain players won't have their time respected by Death Stranding, or they feel like they don't have their time respect. And honestly, if you don't like the delivery mechanisms in Death Stranding, what point is there in forcing yourself to sit through this game if you don't enjoy yourself just to see the vision of the game? If it's not fun, why bother? Just stick with that mindset. It doesn't mean that people hate the dev team behind Death Stranding. They just don't like the premise of the game. It is an interesting discussion for sure, but I highly doubt we will ever reach a point where every gamer somehow is that open-minded about a product and will actively sacrifice the time and enjoyment to see the developer's intended vision through. That's never going to happen, and honestly, it shouldn't. There are games out there, they're just not enjoyable, no matter what anyone tells you about them. The arguments like just give it another chance, it gets good after 100 hours, you have likely heard all of these arguments at some point in time. But if it's not for you, you shouldn't bother. If it's not convincing you within 2 hours of playtime, you can safely refund it without feeling bad about it. And I highly doubt anyone making these assertions and saying this stuff about their time being respected is moralizing their criticism in any way, shape or form. I never moralize my critiques, since they are just that. They are personal opinions and experiences with a game. Nothing more, nothing less. This game doesn't respect my time, therefore the developers are bad people is never something that comes to my mind, and nobody ever said that, honestly. People also don't care enough about the developers in most cases to make such an emotional statement, unless it's said as a joke or by some unhinged person. I've never seen this in critiques or even in Steam comments. I've never honestly seen this expressed, and using the word respect specifically also does not imply this at all. It's just a generic word used in a generic sentence. It's become a token statement, a buzzword, perhaps even. People say it without meaning all too much when they use the word. Unless it's directly stated that they are hating the developers, nobody is pointing at the development studio accusing them of malice. It's just kind of, I think this might just be an extrapolation or a hallucination of facts from a simple statement of discontent. And it usually comes from the big AAA defenders, because you're not allowed to dislike games. It's really not that deep. Sometimes a game just wastes your time. Most of the time these time wasters boil down to publisher or investor mandated shittification. Anyway, so the devs likely don't have much to do with some of the shitty time-wasting aspects of a game. By the way, nobody is entitled to respect, and this goes both ways for the developers and the players. Respect is never just randomly given, it is earned. And if anything, since you as a consumer pay money for the game, the only one that needs to earn respect should be the developer with their product, because they are selling it for money. As a paying customer, you are at least entitled to not have your time and money wasted. And what is money after all? It's time. Time is money, money is time. Maybe that is also where the phrase originated from. Who really knows? Wasting time usually directly equates to wasting the money you paid for the game. And maybe that is what people hint at when they are making that complaint about the game. Or maybe I'm just overanalyzing a simple phrase. That should maybe also be a point of argument. The reality is, the only person that is owed some form of quote-unquote respect is primarily the customer buying the product. In this case, the game. The consumer is always king. I will forever stand by that statement. If you pay for something, you should at least be entitled to expect a certain level of quality in proportion to the money that you spent on a product. Yes, games are supposed to be entertainment software first, but they still come with a price tag attached, and a very large price tag at certain points in time. So if a developer wants money, at least maybe they should try and respect a customer's money and therefore their time. It doesn't really matter how much blood, sweat and tears the developers put into a game. If it doesn't resonate with an audience and therefore makes money, you as a developer are not owed anything. You are not just owed time, respect and money just because you tried really hard. That's not how that works. It would be much easier if all of us would just grasp the simple fact and stop moral grandstanding for developers and studios that, quite frankly, do not deserve the respect that some demand that we have for just game studios. Why? Why should I have just respect for a developer offering a product to me? Why? Where does that respect come from? Why should I force myself to endure unfun game mechanics to see a vision? And if I don't do that, and if I voice discontent, I'm disrespecting and I'm hating the developer. How do you come to a conclusion like this about a simple criticism of a game? Stop trying to purity spiral about the vision of a game and how all of the reviewers are heartless, evil human beings, which in 99% most reviewers are paid shills and corporate pawns anyway. So I don't even know where that sentiment comes from, that criticisms are like unduly harsh and it's bad, and you think of the developers. The developers want my money, and if I don't feel like I gotten my money's worth, I'm going to voice my discontent and opinion on a product. In the end, it is literally just someone's opinion. There's no need to lose your head and get mad when some guy labels your preferred game as a waste of time. But you know, me talking about this is probably not gonna stop any of these people anytime soon. So yeah, this was all I had for today. See you next time.